sleeping bags, but I don't care how many sleeping bags you have. If you're not following some rules, you're going to sleep cold. Here's how to not do that. Let's go. There are so many options for sleeping bags, sleeping pads, all sorts of gear. And how do you start, and where do you start, and what gear should you be paying attention to, and what gear shouldn't you be paying attention to? This is where Eloise sleeps. She didn't sleep good. She dug up her bed. That's a whole other issue. I want to talk today about sleeping well in the backcountry. The things that you need to know to make good decisions in terms of the gear you're using. I don't care how beautiful the place you are is. If you're not sleeping well, you're not having a good time. Okay, there are 3 things that you need to be thinking about in terms of sleeping well. You need to understand the EN rating system. You need to understand R values. You need to understand base layers. Let's start with EN. This is a Nemo Disco women's regular 15-degree bag. What does that mean? Before I talk about EN, I want to talk about sleeping bag sizes, because that can be make or break. A men's regular sleeping bag is 6 feet long. A men's long sleeping bag is 6 feet 6. A women's regular sleeping bag is 5 foot 6 inches long. A women's long is 6 feet long. So a women's long is the same length as a men's regular, but I'm going to talk about this more later. Women's sleeping bags have more insulation in them. So you want to get a bag that is as close to your size as possible, because if you're 6 feet tall and in a 6 foot 6 long bag, that's more space that you have to heat up, which will make you cold. Different sleeping bags may also be available in different widths, and the wider a bag is, the more space there is in there for you to heat up, which means you can end up being cold. That said, some people don't like being in a bag that's really constrictive. Do you feel cramped?
No.
No?
I always feel cramped in a mummy bag because I want to like stretch my legs out.
Way to kick the camera, thanks.
Oh.
But the smaller a bag is, the less insulation you need to get the same warmth, because there's less space for your body to heat. It'll also pack smaller and lighter. Okay, EN stands for European Norm, and it's actually the shortened version of a big long name. I think it's EN 225, 2.25, something like that. It's a rule that was put in the early 2000s in Europe that it took a while for the United States to adopt. But essentially what it means is, the short of it is that if your sleeping bag says it's a certain temperature rating, it needs to pass tests in order to be that temperature rating. So the first thing I'm going to say is, if you can't find an EN tag on the bag itself or attached to the bag in some way, shape, or form, then don't buy that bag, because it's not EN rated, which means that they're determining the temperature by weight of fill, which is the way we did things 20 years ago, which is bad. So step number 1, buy a bag that is EN rated. Okay, your EN rating actually has 3 ratings in it, and they are, I forget what they're called right now, but what you need to understand is that one of them, the one that is like negative 29 degrees for a 15-degree bag, is saying that at negative 29 degrees, you will be alive, but you won't be real happy about it. It's sometimes called the extreme temperature rating. The other 2 ratings are EN comfort and lower limit. And here's the thing that's confusing, is comfort on a women's bag is saying women's comfort. Lower limit is really saying men's comfort. If a man uses a women's bag, the temperature rating is the lower limit. So extreme, comfort, lower limit. It's important to understand that men sleep warmer than women, and so there's more insulation in a women's bag, so they can't be the same temperature rating and the same weight. So if you have a women's 20-degree bag that is in every other way, shape, and form identical to a men's 20-degree bag, same brand, same length, same model, everything, the women's bag is going to weigh more because it has to have more insulation, which means that if a dude buys a women's bag, it's actually warmer than what it says on it. Like that bag says 15 degrees. That's for my wife. When I get it, it's like a 5 or a 10 degree bag. So that's the first thing, is understand what you're buying. Buy a bag that's EN rated. Buy a bag that is the right gender for you. So if you are biologically male, you're in a men's bag. If you are biologically female, you're in a women's bag. Then the temperature ratings will be accurate. We used to say buy a bag that's like 20 degrees warmer than you think it's going to be. You don't need to do that anymore, assuming you follow the recipe. And that brings us to step 2. Okay. Step 2 is all about insulation, and not insulation in the bag. What we're talking about is the insulation that is under you, which is your sleeping pad. Now, when I'm in my van like this, I am super insulated. I'm on a regular mattress. I am in a van which is blocking all the wind, and the walls are insulated. So I don't have to worry about insulation. I just crawl into my bed and hop into a bag, and I'm good to go. But when I'm in a tent, I have to have an insulated pad under me. The tests that they do on EN-rated sleeping bags are using a self-inflating insulated sleeping pad under them. So if you are not using a pad under you that is as warm as the pad that they're using in the tests, you're giving away temperature rating, essentially. There are 3 different types of sleeping pads that you can use in the world right now. There are lots of models, but 3 different variations. So a closed cell foam pad like a Z-Lite or a Ridge Rest. Really lightweight, pack kind of big, fairly decent insulators, not great. A self-inflating sleeping pad like a Thermarest ProLite or ProLite Plus, which the ProLite Plus for a long time was the pad that the EN raters used when they were rating bags. So right there, you know that that's a good insulating pad. Pack a little bit big, can tend to be a little bit heavier, but are great insulators. And then finally, blow-up pads. So that's what me and my wife use, are blow-up pads. I use an REI Flash insulated sleeping pad. She uses a Big Agnes insulated air core, which brings us to a super important thing, which is R values. Back in the day, R values were designed for house insulation, and we use them in the sleeping bag industry for no other reason than there was nothing else to use. But in the past few years, they have reworked the R value system so that they are now related to insulation in your sleeping pad. The higher the R value, the warmer the pad will be, but usually the bigger and heavier the pad will be. I'm going to put on the screen the range of R values, but I feel like around 4 is a good place to be for 4-season or really for 3-season backpacking. You can combine pads, so if you have an inflated pad that does not have a high R value, you could add a closed cell foam pad underneath it to boost that R value. That absolutely works and works really well. So you can totally do that. You've got to have an insulated pad under you in the equivalent R value of what they use when they test the bags. So that's step 2. Now step 3. Okay, step 3. The third thing that they're doing when they're testing bags is they're putting essentially a computer-controlled mannequin inside the bag covered with temperature sensors. But they're putting that mannequin in mid-weight base layers, tops, bottoms, a wool hat, and socks. That's the beginning of the insulation that is working with the bag, which is trapping air to keep you warm, insulated from the ground underneath you with your sleeping pad. If your bag is too warm tonight, you can ditch those base layers and just use regular underwear to sleep in your bag. So also 20 years ago, we said to sleep naked because your body will radiate heat and warm your bag. Forget that. Wear a base layer if you want to get an accurate read on your temperature rating. If your bag is not quite warm enough tonight, you could add a thicker base layer. Instead of a midweight, go to a heavyweight. But what you don't want to do is put on a down jacket or something like that inside your sleeping bag, because then you're not allowing your body to warm the insulation in the bag. You might as well just wear your jacket. You'll be warm and cozy, but your bag isn't really doing much. So those are the 3 things that we need to pay attention to when we're sleeping outside. The other thing that I'll say is your tent's job is not to keep you warm. Your tent's job is to protect you from the wind and the rain and the snow. Your tent is essentially a shell jacket with poles. If you have questions about 3-season or 4-season tents, check out this video up here. Super popular. It explains the differences between 3 and 4-season tents. I want to add one more thing. Suppose you've done all this. You've got a good insulating sleeping pad. You've got the right base layers on, good wool socks, and a hat with an EN-rated bag, and you're still cold. So there are some things that you can do to warm your body up when it gets into the bag, and also to pre-warm the bag. Something I really enjoy doing is taking a Nalgene bottle and filling it with hot water, or close to boiling water even. Be careful, because a Nalgene bottle with boiling water in it will burn you still, so wrap it in something, and wrapping it in a sock works really well. Put that in your bag before you go to bed. It'll pre-warm the bag for you. Another thing that you can do is, while that bag is pre-warming, or while you're boiling the water for that, eat something sweet. So you're giving your body calories, which makes it easier to generate heat. You could also do some exercise. I've been on trips where we did like push-up derbies and jumping jacks and stuff like that before going to bed, just so that our bodies were producing a lot of heat, so that when we got into the bag was nice and warm. But be careful, because you don't want to get into your bag sweaty. So warm yourself up, but don't get sweaty. Your sleeping pad underneath your bag, with you wearing base layer insulation inside your bag, is what's going to keep you warm and cozy. Oh, and don't forget a pillow. Hang on a second. A backpacking pillow will make you super happy, super comfy. I pack ones that are kind of big because I'm a kayaker. I don't care how big things are, how much they weigh. That said, I do use a really small backpacking sleeping bag when I'm kayaking, just because it saves space. Okay, I think this was super helpful. There is a ton of information like this in my book, Go, which is available on Amazon. It goes into tents and jackets and stoves and sleeping bags and sleeping pads and how to stay warm. All that stuff is in Go, and will help you plan trips as well. If you're digging this, hit like and hit subscribe. It would help me out a lot. Otherwise, I'll see you outside.
Shrinking or hitting the bottle?
Hitting the bottle.
Yeah, speaking of, we haven't had any whiskey today.
Nope,
Why haven't we
no.
been day drinking?
Saving it for...
Because we have like 200 milliliters left.
Yeah, I'm saving it all for Emerald Isle. I'm just gonna get